Hi everyone, my name is Michael Kane and I am advised by Danielle Willems. My thesis is titled VIVA DELOS, an investigation into the framework and architecture of the Strip, and speculating a future for the entertainment capital of the world. The thesis investigates the history of resorts on the Las Vegas Strip, the framework of infrastructure that has made them possible, and the systems of control and desire prevalent within their walls. VIVA is a speculation on the future of leisure spaces, resort architecture, and the typology of vices on the Strip, understanding that in order for Las Vegas to remain relevant, the city will have to adapt and propose a new system of resorts fit for securing their long-term success. Resorts on the Strip operate as parallel, heterotopic worlds in the context of our society culturally. The landscape of the contemporary resort is continuously surveyed, with every inch watched over by a central watchroom. Resort patrons are subjects of unwitting submission, with post-panoptic Deleuzian modulation dehumanizing guests into numbers and profiles, to be used to data mine optimal demographic and psychographic traits, which would be charted and tracked within the complexes with various arrays of sensors and biometric scanners, used to increase profits and bring back return customers and extend their gameplay. This relationship up until now has been one-sided, with the resorts benefiting and profiting off the guests. VIVA speculates a new resort typology where both parties can mutually benefit and be on an equal footing. VIVA synthesizes these levels of manipulation control with research into psychology, philosophy, anthropology, and postmodernist, post-capitalist, and post-structuralist theory. Key figures that have shaped the thesis' approach to viewing the Strip are the likes of Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari, Marshall McLuhan, Mark Fisher, Guy Debord, Frederick Jameson, social anthropologist Natasha Dalshul, and George Bataille. I also look to film as precedent of world building and the materialization of how these theoretical thoughts play out across built forms and societal structures. Films such as the following listed below all have played critical parts in the development and have influenced the final speculative project for not only substance, but also aesthetics and representation. Asclepions, which were ancient healing structures in Greece and Rome, were also precedent, specifically their layouts and how they impacted their clients, the rituals inside, and the role they played in society as a pilgrimage for healing. The healing sanctuary of Epidaurus and its subterranean maze, known as Tholos, the Abaton, with its hallucinogenic dream therapy rituals, and amphitheater were key precedents. The Inferno by Dante is incorporated into this thesis as well, investigating the human condition and the subterranean architecture of the 9 circles of hell, where humans pay for the sins of their shortcomings and desires here on earth. All of the compiled research from last semester and this fall is laid out on the communal Miro board, and I recommend flipping through the slides. The research serves as the foundation to the speculative future of the Strip I proposed. This presentation is separated into 3 parts: the Strip of yesterday, the contemporary architecture of today, and my speculative future of tomorrow. Thank you. To begin to talk about the future of Las Vegas, one has to understand its origins. Since the city's founding in 1905 as a train depot for the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad, the city has been a roadside attraction, a place to stop in for a short while and enjoy gambling, alcohol, and all of the other vices mankind seeks. A temporary place of refuge separate from normal life, a mere layover of morals complete with legalized prostitution, and a place to get a quick divorce and even quicker marriage. In the 1930s, gambling was legalized in Nevada, and now thousands of laborers constructing the Hoover Dam became attracted to them, spending their paychecks in the casinos and adult venues opening up along Fremont Street. These places served as escapism to long and dangerous working hours of the dam, and its completion and generated electricity became solely responsible for lighting the famous flashing lights the city is now renowned for. The 40s saw the first hotel to populate outside the city's jurisdiction on a stretch of US 91, a place later to become known as the Strip. More casinos began to populate the stretch of road, all donning regional and Old West themes to capitalize on the fascinations of Americana and the Wild West popular at the time. Organized crime began to materialize into a larger presence than it had previously. In 1946, mobster Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky opened the Flamingo Resort, which decided to bring Hollywood glamour to the Strip, complete with world-renowned talent and celebrities to join in on the hype. During World War II onward, the city enjoyed a massive economic and population boom as the Las Vegas region gained military bases and testing sites, such as the Nevada test site where over 100 nuclear bombs were detonated above ground until the early 1960s. Mushroom clouds were often visible from hotels on the Strip, and Las Vegas garnered a reputation as the Up and Atom City, where visitors could travel a short distance outside the city to witness a nuclear test in person. After the war, the newly expanding middle class and the popularization of commercial flights brought more and more tourists to the desert town. The Strip became a weird intersection, as architect Stefan Allstates, of illegal flows of capital and the post-war conversion to consumerism. Mafia money built it, leisure-seeking Americans bought into it, and converted military airplanes brought them there. The post-war and start of the Cold War tripled Las Vegas' population and tourists visiting the expanding pleasure town. With the development of the highway, American tourists were able to reach the city as well, serving as a midway point between Los Angeles and Salt Lake City. Las Vegas in the 1950s, as stated by historian John Finley, quote, offered tourists the chance to sample exotica and innovations. Visitors to Las Vegas could learn something about the future that seemed to be in store for post-war society, end quote. 1955 saw the completion of the Royal Nevada, and with it came the, quote, only successful act in Las Vegas devoid of sex appeal, the swaying water attraction, a predecessor to the fountains of the Bellagio today. This attraction, as well as the lavish pools and green lawns, became possible as a result of Las Vegas switching its water source from local wells to Lake Mead earlier that year. This brought the city a limitless amount of water, paving way for a grander oasis to be constructed in the desert. The late 1950s also introduced a new form of resort to the Strip. The tall tower shipped over from Miami Beach, most notably influences of Morris Lapidus's Fontainebleau, which happened to be within walking distance of the apartment of Meyer Lansky, the gangster who helped build the Flamingo Resort. The completion of the Riviera not only added newfound height to the Las Vegas Strip, but was also a catalyst of theme and escapism within the hotels themselves, from the desert to a chance to bask in the glamour and fashions of the Mediterranean coast. The completion of the Riviera also solidified the only means to achieve new heights and further development of the Strip: the mobsters' coin purse and union pension funds. The Strip of the 1960s materialized from a strategy to appeal to the mass market, rather than the elites that it had in the previous decades. Travel to the city had gotten cheaper, and developers began to build taller and taller resorts full of affordable rooms to capitalize on the growing demand. Scott Brown, Venturi, and Eisenhower's 1968 Yale studio and synopsis in 1972's publication Learning from Las Vegas looks at Las Vegas as a symbol and charge for architects to view the architecture of the populace seriously, instead of building monuments to their own self-grandeur. The Strip, in the eyes of Scott Brown and Venturi, is an anomaly, something that needs to be studied intensively and reported back to the architectural community. The city is othered, and the architectural studio operated through the city as a researcher, distancing themselves from their subjects in order to objectively document the strange and unique edifice materializing out of the desert sand. For Venturi and Scott Brown, Las Vegas was an authorless phenomenon, born out immaculately from the imagination of the masses. Architects and other design professionals were missing from the internal discourse of casino design. The proceedings of the National Gaming Conferences from 1976 to 1990 did not include any paper by architects or design professions. The casinos and resorts on the Strip became communicators of capitalism and greed, displaying messages pressuring guests to penetrate their threshold and take part in the psychedelic grandeur of living among Caesar and his palace, or under the big top with performing monkeys and trapeze artists. The medium of architecture to display these desires was not as important as the message displayed on the buildings and signs themselves, quite the contrary. The architecture set up the framework for the messages to be relayed, much to the dismay of Marshall McLuhan's adaptations of Gestalt psychology and the decorated shed of Venturi and Scott Brown. Environmental psychology, psychographics, and ergonomics were sounded as the applied sciences that could give a casino a design advantage, rather than a relationship between the design profession and the industry. Just as Learner from Las Vegas had landed on bookshelves, the Strip was already transforming. The late 1960s ushered in a new era of Las Vegas and its management. The exchanging of keys from the mobsters who had been controlling the casinos for nearly half a century at this point to major corporations. Vegas was under new management and decided to clean up their image to become a world-class destination of international proportions. With that exchange came Hiltons and Holiday Inns, disrupting and bringing their corporate modernism into the mainly populace-built environment, sanitizing the experiential extravagance of the Strip. These efforts were furthered in the 1980s and 90s when new, family-friendly resorts and theme parks replaced the city's revues and smoky casinos. The Strip became a pseudo-Disneyland, with themes of pirates, ancient Egyptians, and medieval knights taking over and catapulting the Strip into a position to attract the growing family demographic and their money, a means to make up for the slow decline of popularity of traditional gambling. This era also introduced major convention centers to the city to attract the growing workforce and corporate profits seen in the post-recession up until the dot-com bubble in the 2000s. Contemporary Las Vegas, with its newly constructed resorts, has achieved authenticity for the first time. The resorts that have largely been built since the 2000s are no longer forgeries or copies of famous works or false times. They are authentic works, and architects have been invited to the table to contribute to this growing demand for authenticity. Daniel Libeskind's Crystal Shopping Center and Helmut Jahn, Raphael Vignoli, and Cesar Pelli all contributing to the city center/Aria complex, accompanying a southern section of the Strip, is a prime example of this. The Strip, now muting the language of theme from the repertoire of new construction, makes itself vulnerable as the city matures into what itself is providing rather than the thin facade of theme. The city is the theme. With the city of Las Vegas past its centennial, it has grown in identity and matured into its role as a vacation city of the United States, where guests come to disconnect from the, quote, real world. The city plays a different set of parameters, constantly driving the fantasy of being an adult playground, where you can find anything you could ever desire in close proximity and to the nth degree. The city is excess. It is an engine of contradictions and nonsensical consumerism, a place willing to give you everything but also take it all away. The global novel coronavirus pandemic of 2020 had crippled Las Vegas, leaving the city at a standstill, devoid of income, waiting the lockdown to be lifted. Whilst waiting for the Strip to open back up, the Sands Corporation decided that it will be departing the Strip to focus on their Asian market, leaving behind multiple properties in the hands of a possible new owner, a trend setting that more casino management corporations might follow suit, leaving the future of these mega resorts as we know it into question. Simultaneously, in early 2021, the Nevada legislature agreed to allow the development of new smart cities, allowing new governments funded by tech firms and cryptocurrency. These utopic settlements are set to encompass everything that contemporary cities have, but also serve as self-governing innovation hubs to kickstart the economy post-global pandemic. Las Vegas, being in the desert, is removed physically from the rest of the country's major cities, and lends itself the possibility of becoming an innovation hub itself. Its abundance of lodging, readily available utilities, water and electricity both from Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam, and the current investment in experimental transportation systems such as the Loop and Hyperloop positions the city to become a self-governing city-state unlike any other. There is no greater step in the evolution of the Las Vegas Strip than becoming its own self-governing city-state, the pinnacle of authenticity in the modern era after a century of its existence in the desert. Las Vegas would remain the city it always had been, devoid from the outside world, a place where its own rules and parameters, this time with tech companies taking the reins from the major corporations who've inherited them from the mobsters and organized crime families of the East Coast. Welcome to the next iteration of the Las Vegas Strip. Under the guise of 2021 legislative laws of Nevada, The DELOS Corporation was able to procure a large swath of land in the Nevada desert, including most of Clark County. DELOS is the newest iteration of constructed reality for the Las Vegas region. This tech conglomerate not only has control and full autonomy over the county, but also a large stake in a menagerie of natural resources and infrastructure, including but not limited to the Hoover Dam, Lake Mead, uranium mines in the desert, and Outer Grand Canyon. DELOS has surpassed the state of California in gross domestic product, producing in the year 2034 alone $18.6 trillion. They attribute this wealth to their natural and organic resource harvesting, as well as mutual fulfillment hubs. Another contributor to their success is DELOS's network of new and existing infrastructure, connecting the autonomous zone back into the United States. DELOS brought together the world's greatest minds and inventors to construct the future of human existence, a giant sandbox full of young and eager geniuses. A prime example of this was back before DELOS's presence, when the city of Las Vegas at the time constructed the world's first successful Hyperloop, connecting the city of Los Angeles to Salt Lake City, following in the footsteps of the highway system of the 1950s. The Strip was the first big purchase of land acquired by the DELOS Corporation. The tech giant purchased over 8,000 parcels of land, all major and underlying resorts, malls, entertainment palaces, sporting arenas, and recreational facilities. With this purchase, DELOS also agreed to manage and maintain the stormwater tunnels and infrastructure underneath the city, which will serve as one of the key pieces to their success. DELOS, once a majority of properties were in their possession and management, began to slowly close and demolish the mega resorts, constructing new mutual fulfillment hubs in their place, where guests were able to stay for weeks at a time, receive an all-inclusive vacation including airfare for the modest fee of the resort using their minds for an hour a day to complete blockchain equations, a technology developed in the early 2020s. This procedure received pleasant feedback from the first test persons, as it was surprisingly quite pleasant to endure. Performed while meditating, the mind and body drifted while the sensors in the headset used the human brain as conduit and supercomputer, solving multiple blockchain equations in the span of 60 minutes. Today, after 13 years of exponential success, DELOS is opening a brand new hub, described by their spokesperson as, quote, a palace of ultimate desire and the future of labor and leisure in the modern era. The hub itself is located on a rather important parcel of land in Las Vegas. On this parcel once stood the New Frontier Hotel, a space-age come Western-themed resort that saw the start of Elvis Presley's illustrious career in Sin City. Atop the parcel of land is the modest resort and lodging for DELOS's premier residents and celebrity spokespersons, but the more impressive construction of the hub lay beneath the sandy surface. The section produced by the DELOS Corporation attempts to describe accurately the grandeur and feat of engineering this complex really is, not for only the DELOS Corporation but for humanity as a whole. The informational blurb accompanying the sectional map reads as follows, quote, try not to get swept away in ecstasy as you navigate and explore the experiences available for you within the over 3 million square feet beneath the desert. With unique and personalized rooms and chambers of pleasure and excitement, you're bound to return to your guest room tonight in a heightened level of bliss you've never quite experienced before. Before the daily fulfillment session in our main chamber, you are free to roam to your heart's content all of the desires and passions human beings seek in a safe and closely monitored space. Nothing is unavailable to you at DELOS. The rules and restrictions of the outside world are non-existent within this new mutual fulfillment hub. Welcome again to DELOS, a place where all of your desires are satisfied. Future you appreciates this choice. DELOS's flagship MFH has adopted the language of the existing subterranean infrastructure into its architecture, mainly the massive network of tunnels that the center is latched onto. The building has adopted these chamfered tunnels, their standard dimensions and scales, and multiplied them to fit the interior programming that DELOS seeks to deliver for not only themselves in their day-to-day operations, but also the rooms of programming for guests. Guests arrive to the hub via the subterranean transit link, where they are then given new clothes for their time spent at DELOS by the attendant behind a check-in desk. They are given several pairs of personalized monochromatic clothing and asked to change into one pair of the rather comfortable outfits in adjoining changing rooms. The lodging for short-term guests are located just beyond this welcoming station. The Mutual Fulfillment Hub is divided beyond the short-term residences into sectors, mainly the fulfillment, operations, mindfulness, desire, and exterior sectors. For the sake of this guided narration, I will touch upon the main rooms of each sector. The Great Hall in the fulfillment sector is the crown jewel of the MFH. It is best described in one word: immense. Walking to the Great Hall on the main floor and looking up, you're graced by a half-dozen floors of private procedural boxes towering overhead, stacked concentrically leading up to the giant oculus illuminated by the pool above. The lights dim, shades slowly covered the oculus, and recessed accent lighting from the private suites bathed the meeting hall in a dark red hue, a signature and copyright color to the DELOS Mutual Fulfillment Sessions, with its introduction at the first DELOS hub at the former Venetian resort. Attendants descend the steps and hand out small white boxes containing the processor, which has a striking resemblance to white tennis sweatbands. A tone to place the processor band chimes. The officiant arrives at the center of the arena and begins the meditation ritual. After an hour of quiet meditation and upon opening their eyes, guests are given a glass of water and a nutrient pack as a treat to consume while recuperating from their deep meditative state. The brains of the operation is the central computing bank, which amplifies during the fulfillment ceremony, making the cryptocurrency to pay for the lavish hub in its thousands of experiential rooms. The data center does not just operate during the ceremony, but rather continuously produces content within the fulfillment rooms, monitors guest vital levels and brain functionality, and manages staff members to make sure that all of the tens of thousands of anticipated guests fulfilling themselves daily get the extremely high quality of service the DELOS brand has become known for. The data center itself is a massive collection of servers and processors with an impenetrable secured kernel of concrete and steel. The room, to prevent the servers from overheating, is submerged in a continuous supply of chilled water brought by the cold water storage tanks beneath the complex. Expended hot water is circulated throughout the greenhouses. Moving laterally through the section provided to us, the operations sector is next on the docket. The sector's most impressive rooms are the clusters of greenhouses in the agricultural center. The greenhouses at the flagship MFH are part of the network of growing facilities underneath the multiple DELOS hubs on the Strip. When combined and used at maximum capacity, the network of facilities are able to completely support the innovation zone. While only in Phase 1, this growing facility is easing into production, with hydroponic hothouses full of ripe tomatoes and small vegetables, cannabis and other root plants for a quick turnover within the hub. Phase 1 also saw the planting of a tropical forest, hundreds of palm trees to meet the constant need of coconuts that go into the special topicals and oils utilized in the various fulfillment chambers. The tropical forest is given humid and warm blasts of air, greeting the full spectrum lighted vault of palms. Mature coconuts are harvested by automated collection carriages after a supersonic vibration has shaken the ripe nuts off the tree. They are then loaded into carriages and travel to the core to be transferred into the DELOS manufacturing facility. The mindfulness sector is home to many tailored rooms to promote mental well-being and clarity. Rooms within the sector include color therapy, buoyancy pools, exercise, and psychedelic therapy. At DELOS Mutual Fulfillment Centers, as it is an autonomously governed zone outside of the jurisdiction of United States law, guests are able to pursue activities and substances that they cannot back home, and psychedelic/mind-altering substances are on that list. DELOS has designed several different chambers for different substances, such as solo rooms for psilocybin mushrooms or lysergic acid dithalamide, or group chambers for peyote and ayahuasca rituals. The desire sector is home to the more controversial offerings within the hub, offering to the common person anything and everything that they have ever sought out. DELOS prides itself as a safe harbor for the wants of mankind, where everything is available and monitored, and a judge-free environment. These chambers within the desire sector are not readily available to everyone on the first day, as they require a supplementary procedure to the one daily, an extra cost to be given everything. These supplementary procedurals occur mainly in the private loge boxes higher up above the meeting hall and take 2 hours. Most opt to conduct this procedure while asleep, as the brain is more valuable to DELOS when unconscious. Las Vegas has always had these desires available to those visiting the city, and its materialization was largely within the labyrinth of subterranean storm tunnels DELOS now occupies. Instead of banning and removing the tradition of desire, DELOS chose to embrace them, a progressive approach to champion all aspects of the human consciousness, including the corners that society may deem to be too taboo. The next era of the Las Vegas Strip would not be complete without desire, and DELOS is reimagining their practices. Aspects of desire are destigmatized in the DELOS Innovation Zone, serving as a roadmap for the country in various capacities for policy and decriminalization. The sector is also home to multiple clubs and discos offering continuous raves and parties 24/7. Dark house music shakes the clubs, and spotlights illuminates the dance floor in dimly lit red velvet booths. Time stops in the club. Any reference of time is lost as one opens oneself to hypnotic tracks and flashing lights. If there were to be a comparison between DELOS and the casinos before it, a valid argument would be the tunnels are the gaming floor, conduit to connect discerning guests to their games of choice and chance, a chance to get something that they've always wanted. In the case of the casino, that was money and wealth. For DELOS, it's satisfying desires and enlightened inner consciousness through various means. The massing of the above-ground resort is comprised of 2 crescents surrounding the inner desert garden, an oasis in the desert heat, complete with large succulents and palms shading the dozens of sunbathers enjoying the weather. The balconies of the apartments above face inward, overlooking the pool and gardens, each with a pair of pipe metal loungers and pillowy upholstery. The pool area itself is a feat of engineering. The pool, circular in form, is glass-bottomed, serving as the oculus to bring light into the meeting hall. Brightly colored chaises are laid out in the clearing immediate to the swimming pool. Lastly, the labyrinth of underground storm tunnels connect this main hub to the multiple other locations along the Strip, allowing people to wander across the city through the over 600 miles of stormwater tunnels running throughout as both underground and open channels, until they end up at other locations or DELOS programming in the desert or at Lake Las Vegas or Lake Mead, a pilgrimage for answers in the modern era. VIVA Las DELOS, through surgical adaptation and reuse of the existing frameworks and infrastructure, repositions the Strip to become a system of mutual benefit for the persons in control and their guests. This is only one plausible future of the Strip, built off real technology and current trends. Las Vegas, over the course of its history, has been passed through the hands of multiple different entities and soon will again. While the spectacle may change with the generations, the Strip will adapt with the times and offer guests something only available within its city bounds and at its highest saturation. Las Vegas has been a mirror of the tastes and desires of America, and the future of how the city presents itself and what it offers ultimately rests with what the populace wants and desires. Thank you. I will now switch over to the mirror board and open the floor to questions.